Intro. Looking all good.
What's up? What's up? Welcome back to a podcast with no name. My name is Paris,
And I'm Ebony.
and we're going to do a section of our podcast called All Right, a Real Discussion, where previously we were discussing Who Moved My Cheese. So I hope you watched video 1 and 2 because now we're going to get into the gritty on video number 3.
So we're going to start on page 33. Who moved my cheese? Okay. Later that same day, him and Hall arrived at Cheese Station C. Is this where we at? Did we already tell the story?
I don't
Uh,
remember, but we're going to keep going.
okay. They had not been paying attention to the small changes that had been taking place each day. So they took it for granted that their cheese would be there. They were unprepared for what they found. What? No cheese? Him yelled. He continued yelling, no cheese, no cheese, as though if he shouted loud enough, someone would put it back. Who moved my cheese? He hollered. Finally, he put his hands on his hips, his face turned red, and he screamed at the top of his voice, it's not fair. You have something to say?
No, it's just weird to be like, okay, you come back and something's gone, and you be like, "That's not fair." Like, what happened to make it not? That's really entitled, but it's cool. Okay, keep going.
Exactly. Because the whole point is like you never even consider how it's why or like who puts it there. But then when it's gone, you say it's not fair.
Mm-hmm.
Very entitled. Okay. Paul just shook his head in disbelief. He too counted on finding cheese at Cheese Station C. He stood there for a long time, frozen with shock. He was just not ready for this. Hen was yelling something, but Hall didn't want to hear it. He didn't want to deal with what was facing him. He just tuned everything out. The little people's behavior were not very attractive or productive, but it was understandable. Want me to keep going? Or you have something to say?
Keep going. I'm listening.
Finding cheese wasn't easy, and it meant a great deal more to the little people than just having enough of it to eat every day. Finding cheese was the little people's way of getting what they thought they needed to be happy. They had their own idea of what cheese meant to them, depending on their tastes. For some, finding cheese was having material things. For others, it was enjoying health or developing a spiritual sense of well being. For Hall, cheese just meant feeling safe, having a loving family someday, and living in a cozy cottage on Cheddar Lane. I want to stop here before we. I actually wanted to stop after. For some, finding cheese was having material things. For others, it was enjoying good health or developing a spiritual sense of well being. So let's talk about like the 5 different things they just said. Okay.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
one way is just having enough of it to eat every day, which is survival. That's what the mice do, right? They just eat, and it's just to them like my body has this urge to eat, so I'll eat, right? And
Hmm.
so that's all it means to them, which is I'm just trying to survive. Eating is one of my biological needs that I need to satisfy. So I'm just going after that. And then the next level is like, oh, material things. So like having cheese gives you the opportunity to have material things.
Mm.
And I think that that's why most people pursue cheese.
Mm. Yeah,
Okay.
I would think so. I think like, okay, so someone we talk about this very often, but someone recently broke it down. I think I sent the video to you, and they're saying like, long ago, and we'll see some evolvement in it, but like long ago, people worked for survival. So you went and you worked and you made money for survival because you need to survive. And then after that generation, the was it industrial revolution or whatever, there was no longer this need to work for just survival. Now there was this need to work for quality of life, and you moved into material things. You wanted the house, you wanted the car, you wanted the China set or whatever, right? And remember how, like, in the 60s and 70s, it was a really big deal to have a China set. It was a really big deal to have silverware, things like that. And so, um, since we moved out of the survival thing, like, I don't need it just to survive. Like, I can get a job and get what I need. Now I need to find a job that's going to give me the things that I want, right? But now, after so many generations, they're having an issue with us now is because, like, you move on to the spiritual or mental well-being, because now we're in the era of, like, okay, we've got the jobs that'll give us what we need and maybe even give us what we want. But now I want the job that's going to give me time to myself, that gives me a quality of life, you know? And so some of us now, after living so long, being able to buy the things that we need and the things that we want, we go, now you're realizing, well, there's more to that than that. I can have all the things I need and have all the things I want, but if I don't have the quality of life that I want, then it doesn't matter. But a lot of us are still in the place of we want the money to get the things that we want. Because not only that, the life has evolved, especially with social media, the life has become a lot smaller. So now are we seeing not only the people in our neighborhood and maybe the one family that has a nice thing, we're seeing a plethora of people who have nice things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And accomplish. And so I do think that there is more things of people being like, well, I want that purse that everyone has. It's really cute. Or I want the shoes, that, everyone has and only certain people have. Or, I want that car. Um, so absolutely. Like, to me the other day, this is a tangent, but to me the other day, I was in this one part of the city, which is very nice, but it's still rural, but it's one of those rural places that's like suburban. I would say that. So it's more middle class, even though it's rural. And I was just like, there are so many Teslas here.
I've been
And I'm
seeing
like,
a lot of them.
yeah. And I was just like, I don't understand, like, except for maybe the self-driving feature or something, right? I don't understand what could be so special about a car that I would pay $70,000 for it. I just can't imagine, because if something were to happen to the computerized section of your car that has the self-driving, right? In the end, you will still have your car because it drives and gets you from A to B. So now, what's the difference between your $70,000 car that drives you from A to B and my 10,000 used one that drives me from A to B? Besides the look, because
Or
are
the
you gonna?
status, the brand name of it.
And that's the whole thing. It's like, so did you pay $60,000 more than I did for the status and the look?
Yeah, the flex. Yes.
Absolutely. And it's just like, why? You know, it's just like, why? It's just like when we were switching phone plans and the person was like, hey, do you want this new phone or do you want it? And I'm like, no, you can just give me a SIM card and I'll put it in my old phone. Like, there's nothing wrong with it. And they were like, oh, well, you can get something. I don't, does the new phone and my phone both have love is eyes and I'm going to merge and try to get some person like their coffee? Yes, I don't need to pay $2,000 for a new phone that has the same game that I want to play on the one that I already have. I don't do anything special unless the phone is also going to, like, help me with my mental health and watch my children and possibly give me a little side hustle that gives me an extra couple of dollars a month for the $2,000. I don't need anything special. So why would I get a new phone unless it's to be that I have a new phone? And so absolutely, it goes back into the thing. It's like having cheese is for survival, right? And then having cheese is to get the material things that you want. And I think they evolved, even in that sentence, they evolved it into 3 steps. And then it said having peace moves you into spiritual mental well-being.
Which is, you know, so originally the whole point of building societies was that we can move out of survival mentality and move into, thriving, not just surviving. And society is supposed to allow you the time and the opportunity to think about what's bigger. Why am I here? what, what's my purpose? What's the purpose of life in general? What's the purpose of all of these questions that are spiritual or philosophical? Living in society is supposed to provide you the time to like work on your inner world and to answer these questions. But
Mhm.
instead, we spend a lot of that free time distracted, right?
Yeah.
Chasing things, getting more money so we could buy things, experiences. We focus more like using that time on building our personality instead of doing the work to like really build our character. And so it
Mhm.
is very interesting when you say like level 3 is because now we're moving into a time where people want to focus on character, and hopefully we're shifting away from, personality and focusing more on, like they said, this, developing a spiritual sense of well-being, like health wise, mental wise, emotional, spiritual, financial, to create, holistic well-being.
Yeah.
And then it went into from that. So those was level 1. Level 1 was survival, level 2 was want, level 3 was spiritual. And then it starts to completely go left and feed the ego, right? So it's
Mhm.
like for Hall, cheese just meant feeling safe. So you are definitely mind effing yourself when you say that, because it's nothing outside of you that can ever make you feel safe, because when it's gone, then you don't feel safe, which is exactly what is going to happen. Having a loving family, now you are basing love on cheese or money, which we know that is happening a lot right now in society. There's like, you know,
Well,
how much money you make. What.
well, I was thinking of it like more like you're saying insecurity. And if I have this thing that brings me security or saying, then I feel more comfortable starting a family when I have this security.
Yeah, I think the starting a family, but it's the loving part. With like, what does the loving have to do with cheese?
Well,
Money,
I
like
just,
money don't bring love, and love is not money. They are not interchangeable. So it's like, and a lot of people think that it's like, oh, I can't even begin to love you unless you make six figures.
oh, but I was also thinking like maybe it's just a delusion too of just the overall of like once I have the security, oh, I'm gonna have the marriage and the loving family and the husband, and you go like, yeah, sure, but that is the delusion because once you really have that or whatever, you realize like these people are stressful and the love and stuff is there, but there's also the anxiety you have for supporting them, and then there's the stress from the emotional labor you have and being a part of supporting, incorporating yourself into a marriage, family, whatever. So I think that's also part of. I think the happy loving family is also part of the delusion of not fully like realizing exactly what you're asking for.
And then he says, and living in a cozy cottage on Cheddar Lane. So it's like, there we go. You think you need
That
a
is,
house to make you feel happy,
mhm.
and your house can't be cozy without the cheese. Like, so you can't even, like, it has to be a cottage, right? It can't be just someplace you make a home. So it's like it start to feed your ego, your delusions. And then the next level, which is the biggest egotistical thing of it all, it says to him. And him is the worst character out of all of the characters. And it's always the most deluded that think that they have the leadership skills to lead other people. But he goes, Cheese was becoming a big boss in charge of others and owning a big house on top of Camber Hill. Sir, you don't manage yourself well. You didn't even change. Like somebody had to leave you. I know all the books, you know what I'm saying? So even in the third book, he gonna say he considered himself the smartest of the two. And you are resistant to change, sir. So it's like the delusion. It's
Right. But for both of those, aren't those also the delusion of like for us the American dream?
like,
It's the
yes.
levels of it. So it's the one of being like, hey, I have a house on with the picket fence and the family and whatever. And then so say that's the woman. And so then if you want to break it down even more. And then the man is like, well, I've got the big house and I'm the boss. I call the rules, you know. And so both of them are the stereotypical American dream based, if you want to put it in general sense. And so they both fed into security that they're supposed to get with that and what American dream they were supposed to get with their cheese. But you know what is something too? This is something I had to come to realize. This is another tangent. They always tell you like you're supposed to be the boss, or you're supposed to be the boss, you're supposed to be one of themselves, like you gotta be the CEO, you gotta be things like whatever. And I realized at one point in time, like I was going to all these things, I was being the manager, I was doing this, I was having all this responsibility, and I'm like, I hate this. I don't want to be nobody boss.
Steve, but that all depends on what your definition of, boss or leadership is, because I have this debate and I've been having this since like high school. I don't believe that that's what leadership is. I don't believe that leadership it involves followers. If you have followers, you're not a leader. And this is just my opinion. I feel like real leaders, and if you're thinking this through, real leaders don't want to be around people that they have to tell what to do and how to do and how to think and when to move and so on and forth. It becomes aggravating and annoying and frustrating. So I find it very interesting where people uphold these people and they're like, oh, look, he's a leader, because a lot of people go and follow that person. But it's like, I think that that's probably the opposite of leadership, because why are people following? I mean, I guess it falls into this whole conversation that people go, oh, you're only a leader if you can make other leaders. We're not going to get into that, but because that's just the terminology and talk behind, I don't really like that. But it's like, if I have to lead you and I have to count on you to be a follower and you to give me your power in order for me to be a leader, then my leadership or my control or power is external. I don't have true leadership. I don't need anybody to follow me to submit their power or give away their autonomy in order for me to feel like I'll do what's best for me. And plus, I don't necessarily know what you got going on. I can't read your brain. So it's impossible for me to for me to lead you. And it will just be silly for me to allow you to give me your power when I know I don't have your best interests in mind. I can't, because I can't read your mind. I don't know what your needs are.
And the interesting thing that I was going to put to that too is like, hey, like I hate this or whatever. And it wasn't until like I was out of that and I removed it, because mind you, like I have my own business now. This is what like this is like number 2 or 3 of like the things I've had, right? And so I'm my own boss now, and I have no problem with that, taking the responsibility, taking the hardship, taking the financial burden of whatever that is. But I realized that I hated the leadership or whatever boss role I was getting. I was told that I need to accomplish in corporate America, right? And that, like you're saying, I need to be a leader and I need to lead other people. I need people to rely on me to move things forward. But also the delusion that I've been fed too, because at the same time in those management, leadership roles, whatever, I'm not the boss per se, right? And so really I'm given this fake amount of control. I really don't have control over anything except for these subordinate people that are under me. But I'm still following the same rules. I'm still trying to accomplish the same task of someone else. But now with my own business, I'm like, yeah, I have no problem with being the boss. But also, mind you, I'm not trying to achieve a global 500 type of thing. I'm just trying to produce my product for the market that wants them, and it is what it is. And I don't necessarily need employees, but if I did have an employee, I don't feel a need to be over them and micromanage them, as you would say. I would want somebody who can work for me, and I would say, well, what do you have to offer? What do the new ideas you have? Or you to come to me and say, hey, I have this, whatever, I'm going to add to the company. I'm like, great. I don't want to tell you what to do, whatever. Even at one point in time, having someone else who I did work with, so I'm like, hey, I want you to do it this way and that way, like it was stressful. And even them being like, hey, you're boss, and I'm like, because I'm the boss. That's what it ended up working. And so if I have to take the responsibility of this and you can't come into it with like, hey, this is how we're going to do it, or I don't need to manage you, you need to be managed, then it's not going to, for me, that's not enjoyable. Because now I can focus on the creative process or whatever processes I need to my work. I also need to manage you. And so it goes again in this delusion that you were fed. The delusion is that you have to be over people. You have to have some type of power, right? And it's just like, before you do that, what power have you created for yourself? And it's like you're saying, it's only in like taking the leadership term away and like, especially in being a solopreneur, as you mentioned it, it's like really creating the power and the leadership for yourself that you go, well, if other people wants to join in, I don't need to necessarily be the boss. I want to be a partner in something.
Yes. 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 And I think a lot of people, when you, especially, I talk to people and they're not really ready to destroy the leadership dynamic, the paradigm that we currently have. They're not ready to reform it because in their mind, one day they're going to be the boss and they get to wreak the havoc that everybody else did to them. They're like, I'm wreaking havoc on you. I remember you said this, you looked at me wrong. I'm about to do all of the things that my manager did times 3 because now I got the power. That's why they don't want to do away with it.
People who usually are not the boss.
Huh?
I also feel like that's people who are usually not the boss. Because when you're a person who is usually put or thrust into a leadership position, you're like, it's so often when they're like, hey, you want to do this? And you're like, no. And they're like, come on, like, you can do this, whatever. And it's like, I don't know about, I feel like you too. But I'm like, yes, it is definitely you. From the discussion we had earlier today or yesterday, it's definitely you, where people are like, well, you do it, you explain it, whatever. And you're like, I'm always pushing to the leadership position, and you don't realize like how annoying or stressful or like the extra work you have to do. So the people are like, man, I can't wait till I be the boss. I'm like, because you've never been one. You only want to really be the boss when you've never been one.
Right. And they're ready to abuse that power. Let's not forget it because him would be a horrible boss.
Yeah.
Like you really wanted to wait there till you die.
Look at the situation of like, oh, like everybody come over, this and that, whatever. And I don't want to get too far ahead, but I'm like, yo, you invited people over to your dirty, nasty house to show off what? Just
Loaded
because
cheese.
yeah, I don't want to, but I'm just like, yo, you really invited people like, oh, eat this or whatever. And it was like, you didn't even realize what was going on, but you still were flexing so hard.
Deluded. People are
Mm.
so deluded. Like I laugh at this every single time. Like I see people do something and I'm like, where I'm from, you would not do that. Like you're not going to drive around with stick figures on your car telling people how many people live in your household. That's dumb. That is stupid. You're asking for it. You're not going to walk around with your Birkin bags and your flexi ring and your flexi necklace. Like what are you doing? There's people out here who are starving. Somebody is coming to get it. It's just certain things like it doesn't make any sense. Like, why would you invite trouble? Like several things I think about when they talk about like these big Hollywood parties. Why would you ever have a party and invite people to like where you live? Now I will rent a house and we go there, but like where I live, I did
Yeah,
to what? Flex for people to show what your style like, your house like. What? Like I don't really get unless they're really friends, like your friends, but like to have a party with industry friends, we not doing that. That don't make no sense to me.
absolutely. I also think about like, I was, this is a therapy session, and I was discussing with my therapist of like talking to my daughter about like, hey, like her dad, like he reveals like his job and what he does and like, what kind of income he makes or something like that. And so she was just like, oh, well, like we made that type of money because she's little. She doesn't have like a real concept of money. She was like, do we make the kind of money? She's like, are we rich? And I'm like, do we look rich? Look at the situation we're living in. Is this rich? And she was like, no. And I'm like, we're definitely not rich. Definitely not. We're not, we're comfortable. That's it. And she was like, okay. And so then I was making sure, I'm like, but you don't want to discuss that with people. And she goes, why? And I'm like, that's just not something that you just don't go around telling people that. And so when I talked to my therapist and she said, well, why is that? And I'm like, I'm looking at her and I'm like, I get that, but I'm like, you're black too, lady. Like, why? Like, you black too. So I'm like, what do you mean, why? But I said also, like, in our, like you're saying, where we're from in our culture, whatever good thing that you have or you come across, you keep to yourself, you know, because no matter how good intentions, but the truth of the matter is flexing gets you killed. Flexing gets you in trouble, how we grew up and where we're from. And now in this new day and age of social media, it seems to have changed a little bit, but at the same time, how many like these new rappers and stuff have also been killed because they were,
Beyonce mama just got robbed. Like, and they stole $1 million. $1 million. They broke into her house and stole her safe. Why do people know where you live?
yeah,
So
I
for
agree.
me, if I get robbed, it's an inside job. Cause
Yeah.
why would you know where I live? And then if I got $1 million, why do I not have cameras or something that's gonna alert or I know who it is? Like it's just so many weird things in this story. But it's like to me, security comes with a house,
Hmm.
especially if your house is a flex, right? Like if I live in a high riser on the eighth floor, like I don't really need cameras per se. But if I live in like a 5 bedroom mansion,
Hmm.
you know, where all you got game rooms, basically you didn't throw parties, you like I can count at least 15 TVs in here.
Hmm. Mm.
I don't know. It's very confusing. I mean, a lot of things is confusing to me. I don't know.
I mean, I think it's also about, I think an understanding of abundance. Hold on one second.
Hey, yeah. Uh-huh. I love you. Yeah. Okay, let me get back. Hey.
Yeah, you gotta figure out what I'm saying. And as I was mentioning before, it's like it's I think it's also when you understand that there's like an abundance, you don't necessarily feel a need to hoard. And so I don't have to have like this and that or whatever. Unless I really like it. And not to say there's some people who just enjoy luxury things, who just like having a lot of jewelry, something like that. There are going to be some people who just that's a genuine thing they enjoy. But I feel like majority of the time that's something you do because you're putting on a costume. You're trying to present yourself some way to the world, right? Or this and that. Because you want to have a certain image. And so I think all the time about people I know or people I come across who have a lot of money, and you know this too. People you come across who have a lot of money, who will never look like the average person you see walking around Atlanta, right? I've known people who make a lot of money and their shoes are dirty all the time. They're the same shoes. And they're gonna go home to their $1 million condo, not
Mm-hmm.
house, condo, because they don't want a house. They want to live in a condo so that when something happens, they can at least call downstairs and do
Come fix it.
something.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, but they still don't want to live over there. They want to be here. You know what I'm saying? But they can afford that. So sometimes it's just absolutely. I think it's just what delusion have you been like fed, and like what is your understanding. And I think a lot of it has to come down too. My dad is always talking to me about like, and it's weird to say that because it sounds bad, but to have a respect of money. And it's not in that like you worship it. It's just understanding that it's money. Absolutely, it's great to have and you can spend it, but if you take in consideration how long it took you to make that money versus the 10 minutes you blow it on Gucci stocks, yeah,
Perspective.
yeah, it's
Put
perspective.
things in perspective.
Yeah. And so when it comes to him and Ha, they never had a true perspective on the situation, on what they had, and there was no real respect for that cheese. And I'm not talking about worshiping that it has any power, but understanding like you never asked where it came from. You never asked why all of it was here. You didn't pay attention to the situation of what was happening. You just had it and you was like, it was mine. And you used it and you flexed and you abused it and you put it here and you put it there and you just thought it was always going to be there. And you had no real perspective on exactly what was happening in the situation. And you didn't respect exactly what the situation was. And in respecting that, understood that it could change at any time. And especially for those who have money. Look at how many, unfortunately, look at how many people kill their whole family when their perspective had changed because they've lost their money. Unfortunately, we lost somebody that we both liked. Was it last year, Twitch? And we come to find out later that he had made a bad investment.
Oh, they verified that. They were saying all types of stuff.
But I think that's what you told me. Someone had said like the rumor was that he made a bad investment, lost a lot of his family's money, and that's what it was. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's the last thing that I heard. I will never know for sure exactly what it was because he's not here anymore to tell us. But that's that thing. But even besides that, there's plenty of other examples of average people who have lost their job and suddenly their status has, and they decided to go ahead and kill themselves as long as the rest of their family
You have to say
because
unalive.
unalive themselves and the rest of their family.
Yeah, because YouTube, they have these little markers and they do all types of stuff and block your video.
Very true. So you have, like you're saying, it has to be a true perspective of yourself. It has to be a true perspective of the situation. And for this thing that you're taking such security, such a pride in, um, there has to be a true perspective of exactly what it is, what it provides you, what it offers, and a true perspective of yourself of what this means to you. What security are you really getting from this? Um, and even how you have placed yourself like within that thing of like, does this now make you feel like you have more status? What is your relationship to this thing you have? And in this case, cheese.
So perfect. I know we only have 3 minutes, but this was like the perfect thing to kind of like put this in like perspective. Okay, so I come from a family where a lot of the women did not necessarily marry, right? And so in society, marriage was considered the prize, right? And if you're married as a woman, you were valued more, right? So what I did one time, find myself taking some sort of like
Mm-hmm.
like some sort of like what?
Pride. You have pride.
More than just pride, because I feel like you can have pride, but it was just like
You felt elevated. You felt your
like
ego boost.
I one up, like I got a one up, right? Because most people in our community may never get it. It's not the standard or whatever. So I
Mm-hmm.
felt like a one up, and I didn't like the way that made me feel. So I had to step back and kind of like rearrange certain things in my mind and just like separate certain things. It's like even with the ring, it's like I noticed like different situations. It gave me different like you know, respectability. And it was like, nah, I'm just gonna take it off and I will let the world function in thinking I'm just Ebony without my status, or my self-esteem coming from hitting milestones that society deemed like, commendable or acceptable. And
I think we're
so,
women who don't have rings and don't have different last names.
right.
Take that into account. Because wasn't that a big thing that they were giving you gripe with, that you didn't change your last name?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah.
And it's
So I guess we're going to end there on page 35
we didn't even get
because
that
we have
far.
less than 1 minute.
Okay. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us on part 3. I know it's a lot, but it's always a lot with us, and that is the benefit of this channel. You're going to get different perspective, you're going to get insight, and it's going to go on tangents way beyond what you got. But let's break down all the aspects of the book, shall we? So I thank you again for joining us for The Real Discussion. This is a podcast with no name, and I am Paris.
And I am Ebony.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye.